Hey, you. You're finally awake.
G'day Smut Squad and welcome back to the channel. The Dreamcast was one of those consoles which I never owned when I was a kid because, well, I didn't have the money for it. But either way, I see it as one of Sega's best ever consoles ever make. It just didn't have the legs to continue against some of the other big boys. But today I want to talk about those great games that blessed the console and ones I thought were the best around. As always, this is not a definitive list, and if there's ones I need to talk about, put them in the comments below because I want to hear your stories and what you think are some of the best games for the Dreamcast. As always, if you do think I deserve it, please hit that like and hype button because that is what takes this channel from just a little hobby of mine to hopefully my full-time job. You can subscribe and hit the notification bell to be told when new videos are coming out. We've also got the weekly podcast, and this week on Thursday it will be episode 200 of the podcast, and you can also join the free Discord of the Smut Squad. I'd love to see you over there. Right, let's get into it, shall we? Some great games for the Sega Dreamcast. Soulcalibur. Now in 1999 everyone knew the rule. Arcade hardware was the gold standard, and home consoles were their light version that tried their best but always fell short. But then Soulcalibur arrived as a launch title for the Sega Dreamcast and did the unthinkable. It looked, moved and played better than the arcade original. It wasn't just the perfect port, it was a total evolution that made the PS1 and N64 like relics of a bygone era. Soulcalibur is a weapon-based fighter following a group of legendary warriors searching for the Soul Edge, which is a cursed sword, and its holy counterpart, the Soulcalibur. There was a massive 19 characters on the roster, including icons like the Samurai Mitsuguri, the whip-wielding Ivy, and the terrifying Nightmare. It received a near unprecedented 40 out of 40 from Famitsu and remains one of the highest rated games in history. Soulcalibur is a masterpiece of polished accessibility. It proved that a fighting game could be deeply technical for pros, but instantly fun for a group of friends who just wanted to mash buttons. Before Soulcalibur, 3D fighters were mostly 2D games in a 3D box. You could sidestep, but you were always locked on a rail facing your opponents. Soulcalibur introduced the 8-way run, allowing you to hold any direction and literally run across the arena. It transformed the 3D part of the game from a gimmick into a core strategy, making movement feel as fluid as an action movie. The arcade version ran on the Namco System 12, essentially a souped up PS1. For the Dreamcast, Namco rebuilt the game from the ground up. They added more polygons to the character models, replaced flat 2D backgrounds and full 3D environments, and improved the lighting and textures. It was the first time a home console owner could look at an arcade cabinet and say, "Mine looks better." Most fighters back then just gave you arcade and versus mode, and that was it. But Soulcalibur featured a massive mission battle mode. You travelled across a map, completing fights with bizarre conditions like the floor is slippery, only kicks deal damage, or the wind is blowing you. No homo. It gave solo players dozens of hours of content and a reason to keep coming back. In games like Virtua Fighter or Tekken, the timing for combos were frame perfect and punishing. Soulcalibur used a lenient buffering system, meaning you can input your next move while your character was still finishing the current one. This made the game feel buttery smooth and let beginners pull off spectacular looking sword combos without needing the reflexes of a fighter pilot. The game was a treasure trove of unlockables. By playing mission mode, you earned points to buy hundreds of pieces of concept art, new costumes and fan art. It even had an exhibition mode where characters could perform martial arts katas to the game's sweeping orchestral score. It treated its own lore with a level of prestige that was rare for the genre. Even 25 years, the game still holds up. It does. It's not as good as obviously other ones, but it still does hold up. The way weapons clash with bright sparks, the flow of the character's clothing, and the vibrant colours of stages like the Money Pit showed off the Dreamcast's 128-bit power. It was the ultimate show-off game to prove to your friends the next generation of consoles had arrived. Soulcalibur on the Dreamcast was a cultural reset. It killed the idea that home versions were inferior and established the weapon-based fighter as a top-tier genre. It combines stunning visuals, a legendary soundtrack, and the most innovative movement system ever put in a 3D game. It wasn't just a great launch title, it was the reason people even bought the console, or aside from Sonic Adventure. Crazy Taxi. In the late 90s, the arcade was a place of high speed, high decibel chaos. Bringing that energy home usually meant you lost the soul of the machine, but Crazy Taxi on the Dreamcast didn't just capture the arcade experience, it perfected it. It was a loud, sun-drenched punk rock celebration of reckless driving that became one of the most defining cool games of the 128-bit era. You are one of 4 eccentric cabbies in a fictionalized hilly San Francisco. Your goal is simple: pick up passengers and get to their destination as fast as humanly possible. Forget the traffic laws, sidewalks, parks, and even the bottom of the ocean are fair game here. The faster and crazier you drive, jumps, drifts, and near misses, the more tips you earn. Every passenger adds seconds to your life. If the timer hits 0, the game is over. It's a relentless score attack that rewards skill with more time. Crazy Taxi is a masterpiece of focused chaos. It took a mundane job and turned it into an extreme sport. At a time when other games were turning gritty and dark, Crazy Taxi was a burst of saturated colour. It features Sega's signature blue skies, vibrant urban landscapes, and a level of graphical fidelity that made the world feel alive. Seeing 60 frames per second on a home console while weaving through heavy traffic was a massive technical flex to the Dreamcast. You cannot separate Crazy Taxi from its soundtrack. Featuring The Offspring and Bad Religion, the game had a high-energy skate punk vibe that perfectly matched the gameplay. Hearing "Ya Ya Ya Ya" as you launched a Cadillac over San Francisco Hill became an iconic core memory for an entire generation. It was one of the first games where licensed music felt like an organ of the experience. On the surface, it's a button masher, but to get on the S-Class license, you had to master hidden pro moves. The Crazy Dash, a burst of high speed triggered by a specific gear change or gas combo. The Crazy Drift, a high-speed power slide that lets you 90-degree corners without losing momentum. The Crazy Backdash, instantly reversing to pick up passengers you just overshot. Learning these moves transformed the game from a silly racer into a high-skilled precision simulator. Nintendo gave us paintings and Rare gave us missions. Sega gave us the Crazy Box, a collection of mini-games designed to teach you the game's mechanics. From Crazy Bowling, using your taxi as a ball, to Crazy Jump. These challenges turn the game's physics into a playground, giving home players something to obsess over besides just the main arcade mode. Now, in a weird twist, the game featured real brands like Pizza Hut, KFC, and Tower Records. Instead of feeling just like annoying ads, they made the world feel grounded. You weren't just going to generic pizza place, you were screaming through a car park to get the guide to Pizza Hut. It added that layer of 90s reality that made the absurdity even funnier. The Dreamcast version didn't just port the arcade city, it added a second, much larger original map. This map was designed specifically for home play, with more complex routes and shortcuts, rewarding players for memorizing the city layout just as much as their driving skills. Crazy Taxi was the ultimate pick-up and play game. It was loud, fast, and entirely unpretentious. It took the frantic energy of the arcade and expanded it into a deep, rewarding home experience that never lost its sense of fun. It remains the gold standard of how to make a simple concept feel infinitely replayable through pure style and mechanical polish. Sonic Adventure 2. Released as the Dreamcast was being discontinued, Sonic Adventure 2 was Sega's final defiant roar as a hardware manufacturer. It took the messy, ambitious hub-world format of the first game and stripped it down to a high-octane cinematic dual campaign. It gave us the series' best soundtrack, its most emotional story, and the ultimate life form, Shadow. It's a game with extreme highs and divisive lows, but it's undeniably the peak of 3D Sonic's cool factor. The story is a race against time. The hero team, Sonic, Tails and Knuckles, tried to save the world, while the dark team, Shadow, Eggman and Rouge, tried to conquer it using the Eclipse Cannon on the Space Colony Ark. There are two linear paths. No more wandering through Station Square, you move directly from level to level, culminating in a final story that joins both sides together. There are three distinct gameplay styles: high-speed platforming with Sonic and Shadow, mech shooting with Tails and Eggman, and treasure hunting with Knuckles and Rouge. Sonic Adventure 2 is a masterpiece of vibe and velocity. It's a game that relies on style, attitude, and one of the best reward loops in gaming. The opening level City Escape is arguably the most iconic stage in 3D platforming history, and I'll fight you, I think it is. Oh my god, that soundtrack alone! From snowboarding down San Francisco-style street on a piece of helicopter to being chased down by a giant truck. It's at a cinematic bar that few games have cleared since. The music, the speed, and the sheer audacity of the set pieces made you feel like you were playing a Saturday morning cartoon with a $100 million budget. And also the introduction of Shadow, as he wasn't just Black Sonic. He brought a darker, more tragic edge to the universe, like Keanu Reeves. His rivalry with Sonic felt earned, and his air shoes glide gave his speed stages a different, heavier feel. He was an instant icon because he represented the modern Sonic era perfectly: sleek, mysterious, and slightly edgy. There was also an addictive virtual pet simulator, the Chow Garden. You could raise Hero or Dark Chow, feed them animals to change their appearance, and enter them in races or karate matches. It was the ultimate one more level motivator. You didn't just finish the stage for the A rank, you finished it to find a skeleton dog for your favourite Chow. Now, while the first adventure struggled with frame rates, Sonic Adventure 2 is a technical marvel. It ran at a rock-solid 60 frames per second, making the high-speed sections feel incredibly smooth and responsive. The character models were high poly, the textures were crisp, and the lighting in the space stages like Final Rush were breathtaking for 2001. And the soundtrack was awesome, especially those ones by Crush 40. It spans rock, hip-hop, jazz, and metal. The final boss against the Bio Lizard set to the anthem Live and Learn is a top-tier gaming moment. It's a kind of synergy between music and gameplay that creates goosebumps even 25 years later. And I'm not gonna lie, when I watched Sonic 3 in the cinemas and Live and Learn came on, I full-blown cheered. Yes, I was a 38-year-old man with my 6-year-old in tow. I didn't care, I celebrated. Sonic Adventure 2 also introduced a strict ranking system. Getting an A rank required mastery of the point system, hitting tricks, keeping your speed up, and not taking damage. It turned every level into a high-stakes score attack game, giving the title incredible replayability for perfectionists. However, it's still a 3D Sonic game from the early 2000s. The camera will occasionally get stuck behind a wall or fly into Sonic's face at the worst possible moment. And famously, the music's often louder than the voice acting in cutscenes, not that they're really good cutscenes. You'll be watching a dramatic moment and barely hear what Shadow says over the shredding guitar solos. And while some people may say they love the Knuckles route sections, they are a massive shift in momentum from the speed stages, which some people really hated. Some loved it, some didn't. It's kind of Marmite, really. Sonic Adventure 2 is the heart and soul of the Dreamcast era. It is a game that took big risks, giving Tails a mech, making the story genuinely dark, and focusing on virtual pets, and most of them, paid off. It was the perfect goodbye for Sega's console, a loud, colourful and wildly ambitious epic that proved Sonic could lead the way into the future, even if he had to do it on someone else's hardware. Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. To a casual fan in 2000, this was the ultimate 2D fighting game, a visual masterpiece that looked like a high-budget anime in motion. But to the hardcore arcade veterans, the Dreamcast port is a fascinating anomaly, a game that is technically brilliant but broken in ways that pros could notice. It's widely considered the peak of 2D animation, but it also carries the baggage of being a mutant version of the arcade original. The third and the final evolution of the Street Fighter 3 series, it famously ditched almost the entire classic roster except from Ryu and Ken in a favour of weird new mutants and martial artists. This is the game of the Evo Moment 37, the famous Daigo vs Justin Wong, and it's a pro player's choice for its depth and difficulty. And I've had an interview where I've actually talked to Justin Wong if you want to go back through the podcast and listen to the Third Strike episode. Yeah, I got Justin Wong on the show. It ran on Capcom's CPS-3 board, which was so powerful it couldn't be ported to the PlayStation or Saturn. The Dreamcast was the first console that could actually handle those massive fluid sprites. Third Strike is a masterpiece of kinetic art. It is arguably the most beautiful 2D fighting game ever made, featuring animation so smooth it feels hand-drawn. Third Strike replaced traditional holding back to block with the parry. By tapping forward right as an attack hits, you deflect the move and gain a massive frame advantage. It turned defense into an aggressive high-stakes gamble. And it's the highest skill ceiling in fighting games. If you're good enough, you're literally untouchable. The CPS-3 hardware allowed for an insane number of animation frames. When Chun-Li walks, her clothes sway, her muscles ripple, and her hair moves independently. Every hit felt heavy and every movement is fluid. Even today, with 4K graphics, modern 3D fighters struggle to capture the same soul that Third Strike pixels possess. Unlike the heroic themes of Street Fighter 2, Third Strike went all in on the 90s hip-hop and drum and bass vibe. With a gritty urban art style and iconic soundtrack, it felt like a cool underground fight club rather than a global tournament. The Dreamcast version featured an arranged CD quality soundtrack that sounded significantly punchier and more energetic than the arcade sound chips. For home players, this made the fights feel more cinematic and intense. While it was the perfect port to the naked eye, the Dreamcast version is actually based on a different revision of the arcade code, making it a black sheep in the competitive scene. Whilst Third Strike is a great game on the Dreamcast, it's one of my favourite fighting games of all time, hence why I'm putting it here, there was something we do need to look over. Whilst it was a perfect port to the naked eye, the Dreamcast version is actually based on a different revision of the arcade code, making it a black sheep in the competitive scene. It removed unblockable setups for characters like Urien and Oro. While this sounds fair, it completely changed the high-level meta that arcade players had spent years mastering. Competitive players measured about 3 to 5 frames of extra input delay compared to the arcade. In a game based on parrying, where 1/60th of a second matters, that delay was a deal-breaker for tournaments. And certain moves like Alex's Hyper Bomb have slightly different ranges or confirm windows on the Dreamcast, meaning muscle memory from the arcade wouldn't always work. Street Fighter 3 Third Strike on the Dreamcast is a legend. For the average player, it was the holy grail port that brought the most advanced arcade technology into the living room. It remains a timeless celebration of 2D art and deep mechanical complexity. It's only bad if you're a world-class pro, which I'm not, when you need frame-perfect accuracy. For everyone else, it's the most stylish fighter Sega's console ever saw. Phantasy Star Online. In an era when playing games online was a complicated ritual reserved for PC gamers with expensive rigs, Sega did the impossible. They shipped a console with a built-in modem and released a game that made the world feel small. Phantasy Star Online wasn't just a game, it was a social revolution. It was the first time millions of console players realised they could make friends in Tokyo while they were having their breakfast back in England. The setup here is that planet Earth, or Coral, is dying. A colonial ship, Pioneer 1, lands on the planet Rogol to prepare it for refugees. But as the second ship, Pioneer 2, arrives, a massive explosion rocks the surface, and you're a hunter sent down to find out what happened to the first colony. It's an action RPG where you team up with 3 other players to crawl through 4 massive zones: the forest, caves, mines and ruins. You choose between hunters, rangers and forces, each with human, android and elf-like variants. Phantasy Star Online is a masterpiece of simplified complexity. It took the addictive loot grind of Diablo and gave it a bright, optimistic sci-fi soul. Sonic Team knew that not everyone had a keyboard or spoke the same language, so they invented Word Select, a menu of phrases that were actually translated into the recipient's language. They also created Symbol Chat, a precursor to modern emojis, where you could build your own custom art to express emotions. It created a global community that transcended the language barrier. Now every character starts with a mag, a small robotic pet that hovers over your shoulder. By feeding it items and weapons you don't need, it evolves and boosts your stats. It was a brilliant way to handle trash loot and give players a Tamagotchi-style pet that could eventually unleash massive photon blast attacks during boss fights. The transition from the sterile metallic halls of the Pioneer 2 spaceship to the lush, vibrant greens of the forests was breathtaking. The soundtrack was legendary. It shifts from ambient electronic hums during exploration to soaring rhythmic orchestral themes during boss encounters. It felt like a space opera in the truest sense. Phantasy Star Online perfected the loot drop. You weren't just looking for better stats, you were looking for rares. Seeing a red box drop from an enemy provided a rush of adrenaline. Whether it was the double saber, the frozen shooter, or a rare mag cell, the hunt for gear made the game infinitely replayable. Combat used a rhythmic 1-2-3 timing system. If you time your button press correctly, your attacks were faster and more accurate. This became even more important when playing with others. A force could freeze an enemy, a ranger could snipe from afar, and a hunter could dive in for the finishing combo. It required genuine teamwork in an age before voice chat was common. You can draw a direct line from Phantasy Star Online to Monster Hunter, Destiny and Final Fantasy XIV. It proved that the hub world to instant mission structure worked perfectly on consoles. It was the blueprint for modern multiplayer looter shooter and action RPGs. Phantasy Star Online was a glimpse into the future. It turned the Dreamcast into a portal to another world. Even with the limitations of 56K dial-up, the experience was smooth, addictive and deeply human. It remains a landmark achievement that proved games could be a place where we didn't just compete, but we lived and explored together. Garou: Mark of the Wolves. While Capcom was innovating with the CPS-3, SNK was doing something arguably more impressive. They took the ancient Neo Geo hardware and squeezed out a game so beautiful and fluid that it rivaled the most advanced arcade tech on the planet. Released as the final chapter of the Fatal Fury saga, Garou is a masterclass in tight mechanics and cool character design, and it's often called SNK's Third Strike, and for good reason. Set 10 years after the death of Geese Howard, Terry Bogard, now a weathered veteran in a bomber jacket, has raised Geese's son, Rock Howard, and they enter the King of Fighters Maximum Mayhem tournament to settle old ghosts. SNK pulled a bold move and deleted almost the entire cast aside from Terry. You get a fresh squad of legends in the making like the pirate leader B. Jeanette, the terrifying Gatto, and the Kim's legacy sons. Known for its high quality arranged soundtrack and an art gallery, it's one of the most faithful and respected ways to play this arcade masterpiece. Garou is a masterpiece of strategic momentum. It removed the plain switching gimmick of earlier Fatal Fury games to focus on the more refined ground game in 2D history. This game was known for a just defend mechanic, and think of this as the friendlier, more versatile cousin of Third Strike's parry. By tapping back right as an attack lands you, you just defend. It restores a tiny bit of health, builds meter, and most importantly allowed you guard cancel into a special move. It turns defense into a resource generating machine, making high level play feel incredibly kinetic. Before you start the match, you choose a section of your health bar, the beginning, middle, end, to be your top zone. When your health is in that range, your character glows, deals more damage, regenerates health slowly, and gains access to unique heavy-hitting top attacks, and adds a layer of pre-game strategy. Do you want to start the match like a powerhouse, or save your boss mode for a last stand comeback? And even though it was built on hardware from the 80s, the animation is incredible. Rock Howard's Shy Knuckle or Terry's Buster Wolf have a weight and impact that very few 2D games have ever matched. The characters have idle animations, wind poses, and cloth physics that made the game feel like a premium anime production. Garou allowed you to perform feints, animations that look like the start of a special move but cancel instantly. This wasn't just for show, pros use it to cancel the recovery of normal moves, allowing for combos that shouldn't technically be possible. It adds a hidden layer of depth that rewards players for mastering the rhythm of their character. Rock is one of the most beloved designs in fighting game history. He's a perfect mechanical hybrid, using Terry's Rising Knuckle and Crack Shoot, but mixing them with his father Geese's Replicant and Raging Storm. Playing as him feels like a bridge between two eras of SNK history. And unlike many fighters of the era that felt heavy or floaty, Garou is snappy. The break system, allowing you to cancel certain specials mid-hit, means you can extend combos into flashy, devastating supers. It's a game that feels expensive to play, as every hit sounds like a thunderclap and every victory feels earned. Garou Mark of the Wolves is the pinnacle of the old guard. It was SNK proving they could do more with the 10-year-old hardware than most people could do with a supercomputer. It's a soulful, stylish and incredibly deep fighter that stands shoulder to shoulder with Third Strike as the absolute peak of 2D combat. And finally, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 New Age of Heroes. In 2000, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was the absolute peak of arcade excess. It was a game where balance was thrown out the window in favour of the hyper combo madness and a roster so huge it felt like a comic book exploding on your TV. Because the Dreamcast shared the same architecture as Sega's Naomi arcade port, the home port was effectively 1-to-1. It wasn't just a great port, and for a decade the Dreamcast was the only way to play the competitive standard of the world's most chaotic fighting game. The roster was ridiculous, with 56 characters, 3-on-3 tag team battles, and one screen-filling Abyss boss. It simplified the classic 6-button Capcom layout into 4 attack buttons and 2 dedicated assist buttons, making it perfectly suited for the Dreamcast controller. And the song, "I'm Gonna Take You For A Ride," sorry, but the jazzy lounge music soundtrack is as famous and polarising as the game itself, like my singing. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is a masterpiece of control chaos. It's a game that should have been too messy to work, but instead it became the gold standard for high-speed, high-stakes competition. Now, most arcade ports and other consoles, like the PS2 version, suffer from missing frames of animation, muffled sound, or weird timing glitches. The Dreamcast version was arcade perfect. It used the same CPU and GPU as the arcade cabinet, meaning if you practice a combo on your couch, it worked exactly the same way at the local arcade. Unlike modern fighters where you just buy characters as DLC, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 on the Dreamcast featured a massive secret factor shop. You earned points by playing arcade, survival, or training modes, which then you could use to buy the massive roster of characters, stages, and costume colours. It turned the game into a massive rewarding single-player grind before you stepped into the versus ring. The game introduced a triple assist system, and each character had 3 different assist types: anti-air, projectile, heal, etc. This meant your team of Iron Man, Cable, and Storm wasn't just 3 fighters, but it was a complex machine where you use assist to trap opponents, cover your mistakes, or extend combos into infinite loops. The game blended 2D sprites with full 3D backgrounds. While some sprites were recycled from the 90s, the speed at which the Dreamcast rendered them, the flashing lights, the massive laser beams, and the multiple characters on screen at once, stayed at a rock-solid 60 frames per second. It was a graphical powerhouse that made 16-bit games look like ancient history. Now, whilst the game is notoriously broken, like the big 4 of Magneto, Storm, Sentinel, and Cable dominate high-level play, this actually gave the game its legendary status. The movement options, the super jumps, the air dashes, the tri-jumps are so fast that the game becomes a 100-mile-an-hour chess match. If you make one mistake against a pro, you might lose your whole entire team in 15 seconds. And in Japan, you could take your visual memory unit, your memory card basically, to an actual arcade, plug it into the MVC2 cabinet, and earn experience points to unlock things at home. It was the ultimate bridge between the arcade culture and the home console experience. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 on the Dreamcast is a lightning strike in a bottle. It is loud, vibrant, and incredibly deep despite its simplified controls. It defined the versus genre for 20 years and remains a staple of the fighting game community today. It's the ultimate party game and also happens to be a world-class competitive esport. And that's it. Some games I think are the best for the Sega Dreamcast. Let me know what you think and your memories of these games, and if there's ones I need to talk about and I missed, please let me know in the comments. As always, please like and hype this video if you can, and I'll see you again in a few days for another video. My name's been Danny, take care of yourself, bye bye.